Seahawks Draft Blog's Rob Staten joining us right now from Paris. Hope you're having a ton of fun in Paris. We're going to go ahead and get started with a look at the trade deadline. Something we were talking about earlier in the show is what moves could be made. And I think we both settled on maybe thinking the Seahawks don't end up making one. First of all, Rob, do you think that they do? And secondly, what move should they make if they do?
For a long time, I thought they would make a move just because that's in John Schneider's DNA. You know, he wants to go and make trades. He wants to do the football team. We saw it last year with Ernest Jones. We saw it the year before with Leonard Williams. You can go back and look at Carlos Dunlap, Quandre Diggs. You know, he's always been pretty active when it comes to trades. But I think you just look at this market, there seems to be an awful lot of teams who want to do business. And the names that are out there don't really seem to fit what the Seahawks need at the moment. And then you've got to look at the 2026 draft class and think that it's not a particularly good draft class at the moment. It's the way it's shaping up. So are there going to be more and more teams who are prepared to go and try and make a deal here? And is that in turn going to mean that the price tag goes up because the selling teams know that the draft class is not particularly good next year? So I kind of think that the whole dynamic at the moment is trending towards it might be harder than we initially thought maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I am hopeful that they will still get something done because the NFL is wide open this year. And if the Seahawks could make 1 or 2 moves, then they'd be in a really strong position.
Rob, I was driving in thinking about just the Seahawks and if there's a position where I think they are elite as a group. You got JSN who's putting up numbers that are crazy, right? You got Sam Darnold who's playing some good football. But I couldn't think of a group that I felt like is elite. Do you think they have a group that's elite? And can they win the division without having a group that's elite if you don't think so?
It's hard because I think you could probably argue that the defensive tackle collection of defensive tackles is as good as anything in the league and probably the best group. Whether you would define that as elite is hard. I guess it kind of comes down to like if Joe Flacco has an amazing playoff next year, ask him whether he is elite. And I kind of feel like that's the same thing here with the sort of these defensive tackles. Are they elite or are they just really good and playing great football at the moment? Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, and Jaron Reed for me are like top of the class when it comes to defensive tackles. But is there an elite sort of 2 or 3 players? Is there a position group? Probably not. It's hard though to look across the NFL and see who does have an elite position group at the moment. You could kind of look in the past and go, well, the Eagles had an elite offensive line or the Niners had an elite defensive line when they were sort of pushing for titles. I don't think either of those things are true at the moment. So, you know, it's sort of like the top quarterbacks. Some of those are clearly elite. I don't think any team, the Texans may have the best defense in the NFL. They've got a great pass rush, but is it elite? You know, is Will Anderson an elite player or is it just a great group that have come together? So I'm not sure there is any sort of standout groups at the moment that sort of strike you as like, wow, that is an elite group. So I think it's hard to answer that question.
From standout groups to standout teams, I'm glad you mentioned earlier that the NFL feels wide open because I kind of agree with you. It's hard to pinpoint which team is kind of the team to beat in either conference. What are your teams that you immediately look to with the NFC? It could be 1 through 3, or is there anyone at the top right now for you?
For me, I think Green Bay have got all the ingredients that you need. I'm not sure that I trust Jordan Love enough. Like Jordan Love was great the other night, but then you can see Jordan Love have a game where he looks really average in a couple of weeks' time. But they've got, obviously, a maestro level. They sort of have enough weapons. They have a great running back. The offensive line isn't a liability. They're well coached. I think they've got sort of enough to be near the top. The Lions, when they're playing at their absolute best, are right up there, but they have kind of been a little bit hit and miss. The Eagles, if they can hit their absolute best form, you know, if Saquon Barkley can do what he did at the weekend, then they're going to be up there as well. And then you look at sort of the NFC West, you know, the teams in there, like if the Niners get a bit healthier, if they could make a trade for a pass rusher, I guess they would be in the mix. The Rams as well have shown flashes of quality. So all of those teams are in there. Are any of them better than the Seahawks? They're not miles better than the Seahawks. I think there are probably 1 or 2. I wouldn't fancy the Seahawks to go and beat the Packers or the Lions or the Buccaneers on the road in the playoffs. I think the rest of the teams, I think even in the teams in the NFC West, I think they would have a chance of beating them.
Hey, Rob, yesterday there was a texter saying, look, K9 needs the bulk of the carries. Me personally, I'm fine with the share that him and Zach Charbonnet are getting. How do you feel that the Hawks should approach the carry situation when it comes to running the rock?
I think it's one of the trickier questions because I think that both running backs in Seattle would benefit from having the bulk of the carries. I think that's just that. Zach Charbonnet to me is a lead running back. He's the kind of player that you want to give a workload, not give him 10 carries and think, well, this guy's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs in that situation. He's somebody I think probably needs 20 carries. The degree of Walker. I don't think Ken Walker's a flash in the pan, 8 to 12 carries and see what they can do. I think these players do need a bit of a shift in order to be able to get out there and do their best football. But when you've invested 2 second-round picks on 2 players, you've got to get them both involved. I mean, the Seahawks are tied to that now. It's unavoidable. They're going to have to use both of these players. Unfortunately, I think we're going to see more of the same. I just think both of them need a bit more time. They need a bit more of the percentage of the carries to show their best football. And I don't think they're going to get it all yet. I think they keep trying to find a way to share the load. And I don't think they're going to get that situation you've got with the 2 running backs in Detroit.
Who could be a key name to return here? We're looking at Robbie Utes coming back after the bye, Julian Love, Devin Witherspoon. Is there someone you think just undoubtedly makes the single biggest impact?
Well, Julian Love's a fantastic player. I think that not having Julian Love on the field has been a big miss for the Seahawks. So getting him back, I mean, that to me is the obvious one. He will elevate this defense in a big way. And that's not the Ty Carter, who's really upped his game as the weeks have. He's got more playing time, but you need Julian Love out there. For the Seahawks to be at their absolute best, Julian Love needs to be on the football field. But I want to see Robbie Utes out there as well. I think we've all kind of become really attracted to this idea of having a big ex-Alabama tight end at fullback, sort of hitting 2 players in one block sometimes. We need to see him out there. I think the running game is only going to be at its best when Robbie Utes is out there. So I can't wait to see him back on the field as well. And it was great news that that's potentially going to be.
Niners are banged up. Rams are playing some good football. Matthew Stafford leading the league when it comes to touchdown passes. And then the Seahawks are trying to round themselves out. Has your view of the NFC West changed when you look at Week 7 as opposed to Week 1?
I think from Week 1, yes, because watching the Niners in Seattle, they look like, wow, actually, I've underestimated this team. I kind of thought they were maybe on the other end of their peak. And then watching that game, I thought, no, they are they are clearly a quality team, brilliantly coached. But they've had so many injuries. And then watching a bit of the game on Sunday, you kind of just catching up with them because we got to see the Seahawks play the Texans, and then we got to see the Niners play the Texans. And the Niners did not play well against the Texans. So I'm just starting to think that, I don't know. And then Brock Purdy's going to come back. How quickly is he going to be able to get back to his best? Is he going to ever get back to his best? Is there even going to be a conversation if he comes back and keeps turning the ball over, which is what he did when he was healthy, that maybe they're better off just rolling with the guy who's played most of the season so far in Mac Jones? I don't think that's going to help the Niners. So I think they're going to stick around. Their schedule is not difficult between now and the end of the season. So the Niners are going to be there. And we just have to accept that. But I don't think at the moment, with the way that they played the Texans, that they're necessarily on the level of Seattle and the Rams. I can't wait to watch the Seahawks play the Rams. I don't know how to sort of separate these 2 teams and how close they are or whether there is a difference between the 2. I think we need to see it. I think it's a terrible thing that the NFL schedule has meant we've had to wait so long to watch the Seahawks play the Rams. There's been a couple of weekends now in the NFL where a classic Seahawks-Rams matchup would have sat really well in that late window compared to the games we actually got to watch. So we've got to wait for that, but that's going to be a box office game, and that's going to tell us a lot in this race for the NFC West.
Absolutely agree with you. Last one for me, I wanted to talk about the defense. For his first press conference back from the bye week, Mike McDonald said, our identity is that we're an 11-man rush. And he's talked before about their ability to bring pressure, not just without blitzing, but without having, a league leader in pressures or a league leader in sacks, that it's kind of like an every-man defense. Is that what you see when you watch them?
Yeah, I think it is. And part of me, would love to see the Seahawks have that one player who can just wreck a game. It just makes it easy. Like
I would love Myles Garrett.
When you have it, exactly. That especially is important. I like the 11-man rush, but when you've got like a 2-touchdown lead in the fourth quarter, and you just need someone to get a sack or make a play and just get you off the field, like that's when that kind of player comes good. And unfortunately, there's been a few games to the Seahawks where they've not done that, and they've let teams hang around, and they've not just been able to finish things off. And I still think that they missed that player. But 3.5 quarters, it looks great, and the defense is very, very good. And it is. I still think you could do with that one really impactful edge rusher. If you could say to me, like, do you know what? It's going to be really expensive, but you go and get Max Crosby this week. I would be like, I'm fine with that. Like, go and do it. But it's probably not going to happen because all of the reports are saying that the Raiders are not going to trade him before the deadline. I mean, that would be a huge move. If there's somebody of that kind of quality available, I'd be down. Not the case. Having a defensive coordinator who can be creative and go and find a way to pressure teams without having that top pass rusher. And to be fair, Chenna Nwosu has done a really good job since he came back in creating pressure and getting sacks. So I still think that that needs to be acknowledged. But yeah, that 11-man rush is causing teams a lot of problems, and hopefully it's going to do the same for the Commanders, whoever's playing quarterback for them this weekend.
Is there a position that you feel concerns you still? I mean, we've seen guys filling at linebacker in the secondary. Offensive line, I mean, there's a spot, I guess, or two that you can be concerned about. But is there a position that you feel like needs to be addressed before we can consider this team a contender?
Well, I'll be shouting like, well, the right guard is obviously the position. I'm not convinced that a season is going to be won and lost by the play of your right guard. I think that typically through the games we've seen so far, we've got 7 games of evidence. That offensive line has been a major upgrade on what it was last year and is good enough to get this team to where it needs to go. Yes, they need to be better in the run game, but I think it's fair enough. It's not one of the worst in the league anymore, which is what we were talking about for most of last season. I think the weaker areas are, your depth at cornerback looked great after about 3 weeks and now looks a little more challenging as we get to this stage in the season. I think that could be a concern, because if Devin Witherspoon is out for any extended period of time now, that could be an issue. It seems pretty clear to me that they've been trying to move on from Reek Woolen, and so far that hasn't happened, and that might not have happened because they're a bit more cautious about their depth there. Whether that is a position, if everyone was healthy, that's going to cost the Seahawks, I'm not really sure, because if everybody is healthy, I think it's fine. It's been good to see the linebacker position sort of find a little bit of steadiness now. So I don't actually think there is a position that will, on its own, derail the Seahawks. They've got a really good, rounded, solid roster. I think what will determine whether they can have a really good run in the playoffs is whether or not some of these top players that they've got, the JSNs, the Len Williamses, the Julian Loves, and let's say at the quarterback, Sam Darnold, whether they can play their best football when it matters.
You can find more from Rob Staten at SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Rob, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.